forecast video, we're forecasting a major Arctic blast to come into the United States, bringing down with it a huge winter storm that will go from the plains to the Midwest, into the Ohio Valley, and eventually into the Northeast. Will you be able to use this snowman set? All the details on all of that will be in this video. Alrighty, welcome back into another more weather forecast video. We are in the studio again as we do have a major active period of weather coming up. A lot to talk about, so let's get straight into the forecast. Again, we are expecting a huge winter storm this week, as you may have heard from your news outlets, your local news outlets, even on YouTube. We are expecting a major Arctic blast just in time for Christmas, as well as a huge storm. So looking at the GFS model right now, we're looking at around the time I'm recording this video at 12:30. So let's keep playing this out. Right now we're dealing with probably 30s, 20s in places east of the Rockies. So we're dealing with around average, maybe a little bit lower than average. So things, though, are going to change as we go into the future. As we go into tomorrow, into Monday, we are going to see some snow into Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and northern Arkansas. This is probably going to drop maybe 1 to 3 inches in some places, but we're not really going to cover that because we would cover that if there wasn't active weather ahead, but there's a lot to talk about, so we're not going to cover that because we don't have enough time in this video. But we could see a general 1 to 3 inches, flurries, snow showers in some spots in Kansas, Missouri, northern Arkansas, and some rain in the south as well. Not really expecting any severe weather with that. But as we get going into Tuesday, later in this week, a lot of kids are going to be getting out of school Tuesday into Wednesday. I'm getting out of school on Wednesday. We do see a low pressure center form down here. We're gonna be looking at that as we go later on into this video. And as you can see, by the time we get into Wednesday, you can see the rumblings of a huge Arctic blast about to come straight down into the United States from Canada. So as we go into Wednesday, we're already seeing snow into Montana, the Dakotas. That's getting heavier and heavier. We're gonna see those snow showers coming down with this Arctic blast. And as we go into Thursday, that Arctic blast is going to be coming straight on through. We're going to see a low pressure system develop right here. That'll die off eventually, but that's going to form some snow into Nebraska, South Dakota, into Kansas, Iowa, as well as into Wyoming in the higher elevations. And as we keep going, you can see this huge Arctic punch into northern Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, into Missouri, all the way over here. You can see these blue lines. Anywhere behind these blue lines likely is where we'll see snow. Under these blue lines, or this yellow line in this case, we're going to see rain. So that's just something I'm telling you so you know what I'm talking about when we're doing this forecast. So by the time we go into Thursday, again, things are going to change. We're a couple days out, but this is what the GFS model is saying. I'll show you the European here in a minute. But by the time we go into Thursday, we're going to see snow starting to fall. Likely, again, this is just what the GFS model is saying, so things are going to change. But according to the GFS model, the 12Z or 18Z run, I think here, I don't really know what run it is. I think it's the 12Z run here. As of the 12Z run of the GFS, we're going to see snow start falling on Thursday, late Thursday, and that Arctic blast is going to start coming into places like Missouri, into Illinois, as well as into northern Oklahoma, especially northeastern Oklahoma, and parts of southeastern Kansas. Now, this is just the appetizer. By the time we go into early Friday, according to the GFS, we are going to see a low pressure center form right here in Arkansas. I'll show you the European model here in a minute. But this is central Arkansas where we see this low pressure form. If we see a low pressure form just a little bit to the north, just a little bit to the south, that is going to affect so much. It's going to affect so much, and that's why every single model run we see a little bit of fluctuations. That's why I will keep you updated here. This is just the update with the model runs we have right now. As we go into the future, saying tomorrow, things could look different. Again, the placement of those low pressure is very important in determining where we're going to see our biggest snow totals. But according to the GFS, Friday early morning, we're seeing that heavy snow starting to fall into northwestern Arkansas, northeastern Oklahoma, and into parts of Missouri. This would be St. Louis and Chicago starting to get on some of that heavier snow by the time we get into early Friday. By the time we keep going into Friday, we're seeing heavy snow for St. Louis into Chicago as well, parts of Illinois, southern Missouri, the Boot Heel, Missouri, and this cutoff line is going to be very hard to forecast here. You can see rain on one side, snow on the other side. For right now, there has been good trends that we likely won't see that southern track that could bring snow to places like Memphis, to places like Nashville, to places like Kentucky. And we could still see some snow there, but it's not as much as we were initially seeing. Again, we weren't really taking that. We were only taking that with a grain of salt. So we weren't really forecasting that we were going to get snow there. We knew things were going to change. So for right now, the South, it's not looking good for you in the terms of snow. Some people like that. Some people won't like that. But as we keep going here, again, into Friday, we're going to see that heavy snow start to taper off by the time we go into midday Friday in an area like St. Louis. But then we'll see that snow really start to ramp up by the time we go into early morning on Friday in Chicago, into northern Indiana, as well as into Michigan. So let's back this up a little bit here. So what the GFS is saying right now, we're going to see a track somewhat like this. Now, this would bring a lot of heavy snow in these areas. We'd get our bullseye in those areas. Our direct biggest bullseye would be in these areas. So again, the track, something we're going to definitely have to watch here. We're still a couple days out. Things are still going to change. That's why the snow totals, I disagree with them with the GFS. But again, as we keep going here into Friday, you can see heavy snow into Indiana, into Michigan, into Chicago by the time, again, we go into around 9 a.m. on Friday here. And as we keep playing this out, we're going to see some backside snow in places like Tennessee and Kentucky, but not a lot. And that's a trend that we've been seeing for a while now, so I wouldn't expect much snow. I wouldn't get your hopes up if you're in a place like Memphis, or in a place like southern Kentucky or Nashville or northern Alabama and northern Mississippi. I wouldn't get your hopes up because it's not looking like we're going to see too much snow for right now. Again, some backside snow for Ohio as well as West Virginia and the higher elevations of North Carolina here. But besides the snowstorm, let's look away for that right now. Look at this cold blast. It's easy to forecast temperatures, and we are definitely going to be seeing a huge cold blast coming in behind this storm. So as we keep playing this out, by the time we go into later on Friday, we're going to see that snow start to taper off into a place like Chicago, and this storm is going to start going off into Canada. So right now, we're not expecting too much snow into the interior Northeast. That's a hard forecast as well, because we could see snow there. But for right now, the models have been trending towards not as much snow. Each model run, we've been seeing less snow for the Northeast. We're definitely not going to see snow. I think I can rule that out right now for New York, Boston, I-95 corridor, but maybe into the interior Northeast, we could see some snow. And then as you can see on the backside here, we are going to see some snow showers, and that lake effect snow machines are going to turn on. But by the time we go into Christmas Day, Christmas Eve here, this low pressure center is going to be way off to the north, but already it's going to have wreaked havoc across the United States, and this is going to wreak havoc on your travel plans across the Midwest, into the Ohio Valley, and even maybe into the Northeast. So stay tuned with these videos, with your local news, with all of these National Weather Service. Stay tuned with all these resources, because this is definitely going to affect your travel plans, or these holidays travel plans, because a third of the country is going to be traveling, and we're going to have a major snowstorm and Arctic air coming across the United States. That is not a good mix. So let's look at the GFS snow totals for right now, and oh my god, you are probably getting excited if you're in St. Louis. You're probably getting excited if you're in Chicago. Maybe you're getting depressed if you're in places like there, because you are not happy about this, because this is going to be a lot of snow. But GFS, as always, way overdoing it in a lot of these places. Now, the GFS does have a snowstorm that does have a low pressure center that develops into central Arkansas and takes this sort of path. That would be the greatest scenario to have significant snow in these areas, with the main bullseye being in these areas in northern Indiana into southern Michigan, and then as well as St. Louis, Chicago getting in on that snow. Right now, the GFS model is forecasting 20 inches of snow in St. Louis. While that is possible, it is likely not going to happen. It's going to be a lot less than that. But again, GFS model just showing you how much they overdo the snow totals. But if we do see that kind of track, if we do see trends towards what the GFS model is saying, but if we see trends towards what the European model is saying, I'll show you guys that in a sec here. If we see it go a little bit farther to the south or a little bit farther to the north, that's going to make a difference in where we see our heaviest snow totals. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to this map. Again, we're going to definitely see good snow totals up here into Nebraska and South Dakotas, maybe 3 to 6 inches, 6 to 12 inches in some spots once this initial snow comes down with the Arctic air. But again, once that low pressure system forms, we're going to see more snow with this. So again, the snowfall map, if it likely will not verify, it's going to change a lot as we go into the future, but something to watch. As you can see, that cutoff line for the southern United States, anywhere really south of this line isn't going to get in much snow. So Nashville, Memphis, it's looking less and less likely that the Northeast will get a lot of snow and the South will get a lot of snow. Still, changes are possible. Deviations in how the track is going to matter as we continue to forecast this storm. So again, we are going to have to continue to watch the track of this storm. Again, we are expecting no snow in St. Louis and Chicago. I'm pretty much guaranteeing that at this point. But where we see our biggest snows, that's the question, and we'll get an answer to that question as we go into the future. This is really just to look at and get an idea of what could happen, how it could change, and how that could affect the snow total. So now let's look at the European model. So as we keep going here, we're not going to look at it as in-depth as we did at the GFS model, but by the time we go into Thursday, you can see we have a low pressure center forming a lot more north than what the GFS had. So like I said, if we have deviations in that track like we're having with the European model and the GFS, that's going to majorly affect how much snow we see in a place like St. Louis or in a place like central Missouri and central Illinois into Chicago as well into Indiana. But we do have a good we do have a good idea that this storm will likely take somewhat of this sort of track. So that is good that the models are now agreeing on the track a little bit, but still those little deviations are going to cause to see not as much snow in some of these areas. And as you can see, let me X out that ad real quick here. As you can see, we don't see, with the GFS model, we're going to just see snow in St. Louis, according to the model run right now. With the European model, we're going to see a cutoff zone and snow on the backside in these places. That is going to majorly affect how much snow we see. And the European model is even saying we're going to see a track sort of like that, which would cut off a lot of snow in these places. So again, something to watch here is the track, because you saw the other second that the GFS model had the low pressure center up here by the time we went into Christmas Eve. The European model has the low pressure center up here by the time we go into Christmas Eve. So again, there's deviations in how the track is going to be, and that is majorly going to affect how much snow we get in these areas. So the main thing I want you guys to do is just stay tuned here. The European model and the GFS model are not in agreement of what we're going to see. But something that is going to be possible, again, we just look at the European model, we just look at the GFS model. Again, the track is a little bit iffy. We don't really know yet. We likely will see snow in a place like St. Louis and Chicago, but again, the exact snow totals we do not know yet. But one thing we definitely could see, as we have this model loading right here, is pretty strong winds with this. So if we see something like what the GFS model is suggesting, with snow as well as strong winds into St. Louis, into Illinois, into Missouri, into Indiana, as we keep going out here, you can see those are some pretty strong winds. So we could have isolated blizzard conditions in a lot of these places. So the winds are going to be strong. We're going to have snow. This is not good for holiday travel. You need to stay tuned with what these weather forecasts with the National Weather Service, with your local meteorologist, certified meteorologist. You guys need to stay tuned, because this is not a good setup. We are definitely going to have disruptions to travel. And another thing that we are going to have is a lot of cold air. So starting out on Thursday, you can see we have this big cold air blast coming in to the United States. Again, I'm not looking at the snow anymore because we already covered that, but the cold air blast, we know almost the exact details on where and when and what temperatures we're going to see, because it is a lot easier to forecast the cold. You can see this line right here as that cold air blast come through. It's going to be 40 degrees in Evansville, Indiana by the time we go into Friday, early Friday. but by the time we go into late on Friday, it's going to be 15 degrees. You can just see how this Arctic air doesn't care about those warm temperatures. It just blasts its way on through, and this is going to be historic. Coldest Christmas in decades in a lot of these places, so it is going to be really cold. You need to be having those coats. You need to be getting those gloves. You need to be getting those snow shovels in some places. I wouldn't say get that yet, maybe a couple days after I've put this video out on YouTube. Maybe that's when you'll get those snow shovels, when we have more information on that. But we're going to see a big cold air blast. Again, that winter storm though, still, we are going to see a big winter storm. Exact snow totals, the track, a little iffy for right now, but we will see a snowstorm that goes from the southern plains to through the Midwest, into the Ohio Valley, and likely into the Great Lakes regions and Northeast as well. But definitely something we're going to see is that major Arctic blast, and that about wraps up this more weather forecast video. Again, major Arctic blast to come in. That's going to be causing coldest Christmas in decades in a lot of these places. Winter storm as well. Stay tuned with these updates, as we are expecting a major storm to wreak havoc on your travel plans. As always, stay prepared out there. Make sure you subscribe and go follow me on Twitter, and I will see you soon with more weather.